This video covers why it is you have such a tough time making up your own mind, and conversely, why other people have such an easy time making up your mind for you. Are you ready? Let's dig in. Let's talk about Strava.com for a second. Strava.com is an app, something you can use to track your sports performance. Whether you're starting out in bicycling or jogging or swimming or any other activity, you can compare your results, your times, your pulse rates, and all those things online with other people. This provides a group context and a lot of support very rapidly. It's a brilliant idea. There are millions of people who have taken up this app. You can pay for extra services, but for the most part it's free. The owners of this website, of Strava.com, had access to everyone's information. They got some really surprising results. They knew when people would start, how long they'd go for, when they'd quit, and if they'd come back. Regardless of what activity it was they were doing, they would tend to quit within 3 weeks. That's right, within 20 days, they had an 80% failure rate. Now keep in mind, these numbers from Strava.com measure people who are probably quite prepared. At the very least, they've already got themselves a device whereby they can use the app on their cell phone or on a watch. Chances are they have the watch specifically so they can monitor their heart rate and stuff. They already have a community. Almost all of them sign up because they have a friend online, or if they don't have a friend online, they can connect with them fairly easily there. That's the point of the app. They also have all the gear necessary. And yet, despite all these preparedness things, you're still getting 80% failure rate within 20 days. Now contrast that from what we know of jobs. With jobs, people start them and do them until they decide whether or not they can survive them or like them, and then they quit. Some of them last for a long time, compared to picking up a new habit or a new skill from something like Strava.com. A job is 5 to 8 hours a day, multiple habits, multiple skills, different power dynamics, and it also requires before your job and after your job a number of skills and habits as well. You got to wake up in time. You got to be able to make your lunch. You got to be able to keep track of the clock. All these things are implicit and complicit with being able to keep a job. And yet, even though getting a new fitness routine for 5 or 10 minutes a day is horribly simple compared to all the complexities of holding a job for 5 days a week for 4 to 8 hours a day, you seem to screw up on one and you can do the other one almost guaranteed for 2 years if you want, 10 years, 50 years. How does this make sense? In order to get this to make a bit more sense, next I look at brains. About 1 million years ago, we were Homo erectus. 300,000 years ago, we are Homo sapiens. In that time, we started with a brain that was fairly small. From there to here, we gained triple the size of our brain, around, maybe slightly less. Then, recently, in the past 30,000 years, we lost 10% of our brains. Also in the past 30,000 years was our first civilization. It is decidedly strange how the one and the other happened in such a short period of time and at the exact same time. There are many theories as to why we would lose 10% of our brains. The most popular one is that we have self-domesticated ourselves. In order to get along with ourselves, we had to be a bit more stupid. Now, that seems like a huge conclusion to make, doesn't it? So we also looked at other creatures which domesticated due to their getting along with us. We domesticated dogs over 14,000 years, give or take. And there actually is an experiment going on in Russia right now over the past 70 years. They took the silver fox and they're domesticating it as we speak, and they're finding out how quickly the Arctic fox picks up many traits of domestication in a very short period of time when you're looking for creatures that are more docile. It has a different rate as well with different creatures. For example, the wild boar, in the process of becoming a pig, it lost 35% of its brain. Now, is that what happens when something starts off really smart in order to hang out with us so that it can get along? Or is that what happens when something becomes food? Maybe cows and bulls, had we never touched their evolutionary line, would be far more sophisticated and be going to university? We don't know. There is a strong correlation between domestication and how easily things get along and their impact with hanging around us. Where am I going with this? I don't know. The more so-called civilized or first world country there is, the more they gravitate to the cities. People really give up farming the moment they have the chance, and they all get together in these tight little areas. We really like to stay close to each other, and I would bet if we were smarter that we would have done what every creature has done over the past few 100 million years. And what is that? We probably kill and eat each other. We're not doing that anymore. You have places like Mexico City with 10 million people in a space the size of Mexico City. That space would normally be held by, 1 to 10 tribes? How do we do it? Suffice to say, I am not here to explain to you how our population has gone up orders of magnitude. My point here is that since that time, we've not only been able to work together, but we seem to need each other. We've domesticated ourselves at least to the point where we can stand proximity of millions, if not tens of millions, within a really, really comparative short space. It is advantageous that we have recently gained smaller brains because that requires less energy to feed us. They are 2% of our body and they require 20% of our energy. So these things suck up a lot of gas. But this is something I really want to make clear to you. This is why people do professional sports. You go to a massive stadium, you might get stabbed, maybe you'll have a riot, maybe they'll sell you horrible food for too much money. This is why people go to gyms to work out. You work out at home, it'll cost you a fraction of the amount in the long term, and you wouldn't have to deal with the smell of 20 to 100 strangers while they're working out. This is why people do concerts. You go there expecting worse music and worse conditions. Maybe somebody's smoking, maybe somebody passes out, somebody's screaming. This is why we do all of our social activities, including social activities that are designed to change us, like high schools, colleges, and universities. All the courses. Courses online are much cheaper, easier, and at your convenience, and they don't seem to work as much. Understanding this group effect also explains how much power you have. You have incredible amounts of influence over everyone's mind. The more of a stranger you are, the more influence you have. Does that make sense? No. And yet it's the way it is. If you find things in your world, for whatever reason, that you like or want to see more of, all you have to do is encourage them in some way. The human condition suggests that we tend to either ignore things or criticize them. We tend to live off of negative energy. We tend to feed off of the things that go wrong so we can correct those things and thereby improve our lives. In contrast with that, when you recognize the power you have over other people and how you can most easily influence them just by finding out how to hit their like button or finding out how to subscribe to their perspective, these things are your superpower. I recommend you use them as often as you can.